Welcome to the channel where we understand great works, not just read them. Imagine a city that has just survived a war. The enemy is defeated, the gates are secured, but instead of celebration, a heavy silence reigns. This is precisely where the story of Antigone begins, one of the greatest tragedies ever written. In ancient Thebes, the morning brought no peace but a suffocating stillness following a night of terror. The city was saved and the enemy was conquered, yet no one could truly rejoice. Outside the gates of Thebes lay the bodies of two brothers, 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿 and Polynices, the sons of the ill-fated Oedipus. One died defending Thebes. The other attacked it with a foreign army. In their final duel, brother raised weapon against brother. The blood of the same house was spilled upon the very same earth as both fell dead, each by the hand of the other. To truly understand the tragedy of Antigone, one must understand the house from which she comes. It is the house of Oedipus, a lineage deeply scarred by a curse, guilt, and profound suffering. Oedipus was once the glorious ruler of Thebes, the brilliant mind who solved the riddle of the Sphinx. Yet behind his immense glory lay a horrifying truth. Unknowingly, Oedipus had killed his father, Laius. Unknowingly, he had married his own mother, Jocasta. When the truth finally came to light, his entire world shattered. Jocasta, unable to bear the agony, took her own life. Oedipus, broken by the sheer horror of his destiny, gouged out his own eyes and fled Thebes as a blind exile. His children 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿, Polynices, 𝐖e𝐥𝐸, and Antigone were left behind to live under the crushing weight of a sin they did not commit, but inherited. Following the departure of Oedipus, his sons were meant to share the throne alternately. But power, like a dark poison, seeped between them. 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿 refused to surrender the crown. Polynices, insulted and exiled, gathered a foreign army and marched against his own birthplace. Thus, Thebes was once again dragged into bloodshed. This was no longer just a war between cities, but a war between brothers, a direct clash between blood and absolute power. When the battle finally ended, Thebes stood saved, but the house of Oedipus was ruined once more. The deaths of the brothers instantly opened a new, even deeper tragedy. With 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿 and Polynices gone, the throne was seized by Creon, Jocasta's brother, and the uncle of Antigone and 𝐖e𝐥𝐸. Creon was determined to prove that Thebes would no longer be a city of chaos. He demanded absolute order, unwavering obedience, and a law that stood above all mankind. He decreed that 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿, who died defending Thebes, be buried with the highest military honors, his body sent off as a true hero. But Polynices, who came with a foreign army against his own city, was branded a traitor by Creon. His body was condemned to remain unburied. No one was permitted to cover him with earth. No one was allowed to mourn him. No one was to pay him final respects. And anyone who dared to defy this edict would be sentenced to death. To the ancient Greeks, leaving a body unburied was the ultimate desecration. They believed that a soul could never find eternal peace if the body did not receive its sacred funeral rites. Antigone heard Creon's decree, but her heart could never accept it. To Creon, Polynices was a traitor. To her, he was her brother. Early in the morning, Antigone called for her sister, 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿. She told her that their brother lay outside the city walls, abandoned without a burial, without a prayer, and stripped of all human dignity. 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿 was paralyzed by fear. She loved Antigone and she loved her brother, but her terror of Creon's wrath was far stronger than her resolve. Antigone countered that there are laws older and far more sacred than the decree of any earthly ruler. Her duty to her dead brother was absolute. 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿 begged her not to walk blindly into her own death. But Antigone's mind was made up. If 𝐖e𝐥𝐸𝐿 refused to help, she would go alone. And so, Antigone set off on a path of no return. Armed not with weapons, nor with a political rebellion, but guided purely by her conscience and love for her brother. When she reached the exposed body of Polynices, she knelt beside him. With her bare hands, she gathered the dry earth and began to cover his flesh. It was not a grand funeral. There were no mourning songs, no gathering crowds, no formal ceremonies. Yet, there was love, profound reverence, and human dignity. The palace guards spotted the act and immediately informed Creon. Someone had violated his decree. Someone had dared to defy the king. Creon flew into a rage. To him, this was not an act of faith or familial love, but a direct treasonous assault on his sovereign power. He ordered the culprit found at once. The guards returned to the field. They brushed the symbolic earth off the corpse and stood watch, knowing the mysterious culprit might return. When Antigone came back and discovered that her brother's body had been uncovered, she cried out in agony. It was the raw, piercing cry of a sister, not of fear. She did not run. She did not hide. Once again, she gathered the earth and covered Polynices. In that exact moment, the guards seized her. When they brought her before Creon, Antigone stood tall and unfaltering. She did not beg for mercy. She did not deny her actions. She proudly confessed to everything. Creon demanded to know if she was aware of his decree. Antigone replied that she knew it well, but declared that the law of a mortal man can never override the eternal, unwritten laws of the gods. Creon could rule the city, but he could not rule the human conscience. He could not govern the bond of love between a sister and her brother. Creon could not bear the humiliation of a young woman publicly defying his authority. If he left her unpunished, his rule would appear weak. The conflict between them escalated far beyond a personal dispute. Creon was defending the law of the state. Antigone was defending the law of the soul. Then Ismene was brought in. Broken by grief, she begged to share the guilt with her sister, refusing to let Antigone face death alone. But Antigone refused her. Not out of hatred, but because the truth mattered. The deed was hers, the decision was hers, and the sacrifice belonged to her alone. Next came Haemon, Creon's son and Antigone's fiancé. He approached his father with deep respect, attempting to be the voice of reason. Haemon pleaded with Creon to listen, telling him that the citizens did not condemn Antigone. They pitied her. She had murdered no one. She had merely buried her brother. But Creon remained deaf to his words. In his son's advice, he saw only disobedience. In love, he saw weakness. In his own flesh and blood, he saw an adversary. Haemon realized that his father was completely blinded by his own pride. He walked away with a dark, prophetic warning. If Antigone dies, her death will not be the only one. Creon decided not to execute Antigone publicly. Instead, he ordered her to be sealed alive inside a hollow stone tomb. She was young. She was meant to be a bride, to have a home, love, and a future. Yet instead of wedding hymns, she was escorted by a terrifying silence. Antigone wept not out of regret, but because she felt the heavy toll of everything she was forced to abandon. Yet, even on the brink of death, she never recanted her choice. Just as Creon believed he had secured his victory, Tiresias, the blind prophet, arrived before him. He possessed no physical sight, yet he saw the truth with absolute clarity. Tiresias warned him that the gods were furious. The sacrificial altars refused to burn properly, and the birds of heaven screamed with dark, chaotic omens. The natural order of the universe had been inverted. The cause was clear. Polynices the dead was left exposed among the living, while Antigone the living was buried among the dead. Tiresias warned Creon to correct his error immediately. If he refused, he would pay with a corpse from his own house. Terrified at last, Creon faltered. The chorus urged him not to waste another second. He needed to bury Polynices and free Antigone instantly. Creon went to Polynices first, granting him what should have been given long ago: earth, sacred rights, and eternal peace. He then rushed to Antigone's tomb. But tragedy operates on a cruel, unyielding law. Truth that arrives too late cannot save. It only illuminates the magnitude of the guilt. When they broke open the tomb, Antigone was already dead. She had taken her own life within the stone dungeon. Cradling her body was Haemon, destroyed by grief. He held his beloved close, and when he looked up at his father, his eyes held no respect, only a bitter, venomous accusation. Haemon could not survive her loss. Where a wedding should have been celebrated, a funeral took place. Where love should have thrived, blood was spilled. Yet the catastrophe did not stop there. The news of Haemon's suicide quickly reached Eurydice, his mother and Creon's queen. She absorbed the horrific truth without a cry, without a single word. But sometimes, silence is far more terrifying than weeping. She retreated deep into the palace and took her own life. When Creon was delivered this final news, he was no longer a powerful king. He was a broken father, a shattered husband, a ruined man. He won his political battle against Antigone, but he lost his soul. He preserved his crown, but destroyed his home. He defended his law, but annihilated his own bloodlines. Now he finally saw the truth. Law stripped of humanity is not justice, it is cruelty. Pride, when seated upon a throne, becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. Thus ends the tragedy of Antigone by Sophocles. But her story does not conclude with death. It echoes through every era when a human being must choose between fear and conscience. Antigone had no armies, no throne, no sovereign power. Yet she possessed something far greater, an absolute, unyielding loyalty to what she knew was holy. Creon possessed the law, the soldiers, and the throne. Yet he lacked the wisdom to yield before it was too late. Therefore, though Antigone dies, she remains morally transcendent. And Creon, though he survives, is utterly defeated. Antigone is a timeless testament to the human conscience, the price of pride, and the eternal clash between law and true justice. It leaves us with the ultimate question we all must eventually face. When the entire world commands you to stay silent, will you have the courage to speak the truth? If this video helped you better understand Antigone, stay tuned with the channel. Because great works are not just meant to be read, they are meant to be understood. Close the book, but keep your mind open. Understanding is just the beginning. See you in the next great work.